Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. Alec here. Well, I finally finished it. The project I've been working on for the past, I don't know, 6 months, maybe not quite that long, but not far off it, is 200 years war armies mainly for Lion Rampant, but sort of ready for Saga as well when they bring out the Age of Chivalry, which I don't know when that's coming out. It won't be for a little while yet, probably not even this year. It might be late this year or early next year, but primarily for Lion Rampant, which, as you know, I do enjoy. I just wanted to go through both armies with you now, just to show you the setup I've chosen and why I've chosen them, and see what you think of them. So here we go. Let's look at the French first. As you can see, I'm really pleased with them actually. They worked out really, really well. And if you look at the army list, which I'll put on the screen, so you can see, I've got 36 points worth of troops. Often I'd use only 24 points, which is the standard game, but I find I do like to have bigger games, and so I've made them, both armies, 36 points. You can see from the French here, let's cover the French first. I know you've already seen some photographs of these, which I put out a little while ago, but I'll go through them again anyway. So for 36 points, I've got 2 units of knights, because that's what a French army should have. They should have lots of knights. And as you can see there, a unit of heavy cavalry as well. They've not got any upgrades because it would take them over 36 points, but you know, you could upgrade the knights if you wanted to. You can make them motivated, which instead of moving on 7+, they move on 6+, but that's an extra point. You can also make them drilled, which means they don't have to wild charge, but I think that would be wrong for French because they were a bit crazy and used to charge at the slightest opportunity, so that should stay anyway, but there is the opportunity there if you wanted to do that. Of course, a lot of the mounted that were used in the 100 Years' War weren't just knights anyway. They did have some heavy cavalry, so I have got that unit of heavy cavalry as well. Then looking at the infantry, I've got 2 units of heavy infantry. One's been upgraded to veteran. They're the ones with the sort of pole weapons and axes. So they are better in attack. Well, they're the same in attack as they are in defence. They get hit on 4+. But of course they then can't form wall of spears. The other unit I've left exactly as it would be as normal heavy infantry with no upgrades, and they're the spear-armed unit, and they of course can form wall of spears if they so wish. And then looking at the crossbows that I have, now the French used to hire Genoese crossbowmen, and these guys were the bee's knees. They were pretty good in combat, or pretty good in a fight. And they often used pavises. I've done one unit that have got pavises, and that would be Genoese anyway, although I think some French units had pavises as well, but I've actually done these as Genoese. And they, at 6 points, they're very, very effective, because you can see it makes their armour go up from 2 to 4 for shooting and 3 for melee, so really, really effective. I've only done one unit though, because I personally feel there should be other crossbowmen as well, and I've listed, as you can see there, a unit of crossbows and skirmishers as well. And in fact, if you look on the army list, I would probably tend to use them as 2 units of skirmish crossbows. They haven't got quite the range as normal crossbows, but often a lot of the French crossbowmen, from the research I made, they didn't have the full sort of war crossbow. They often used sort of hunting crossbows, so they wouldn't have such a long range anyway. And crossbows in that period used to vary greatly, from sort of lightweight ones to medium size, and then the really big ones, which the Genoese would have. So I would tend to use those as 2 units of skirmishers crossbows. But there is the option there to make the 1 unit of normal crossbows, but I wouldn't have them with pavises. So that's the French, 36 points there, and it's a really nice little army. And there's various shots. I've got Joan of Arc as my leader in the middle there. You can see her with the white flag. So yeah, they painted up really well. I've tried to do, the delivery as much as I can, and I'm very happy with the way they turned out anyway. Right, now let's move on to the English next, which I only just finished this week, and here they are. And I say very, very pleased with these have worked out. The English, of course, have a lot of longbow, and you can see from the army list here, I've got 3 units of knights, but of course they're dismounted. There is a case, in fact, for a skirmish game. You could also have some mounted knights. I haven't done any yet. I might add some later. But because although it's a skirmish game, I tend to stick to the sort of numbers and the troop types that were used in the big battles like Agincourt, Crécy, and Poitiers. And most of the time, the English did fight dismounted. But that wouldn't stop me doing a unit of mounted knights, but I'm not going to at the moment. So there's 3 units of knights there, foot knights, dismounted. There are, and you'll see, I'll come back to the heavy cavalry in a minute, and then 2 units of longbows, which have been upgraded to veterans. And you can see they're making up the front rank. So normally for a 24-point army, you just have 2 units of elite foot and 2 units of longbows. That's all you're going to get. But I wanted to have another unit of foot knights, so they'd have the ideal layout would be English longbows with foot knights either flank and maybe another unit in the middle, which would be the classic sort of Agincourt type setup. Although we say it is a skirmish, so we don't have to do that. Now, I needed more points though, so I wanted to do something with another 6 points, and I didn't want any more knights, I didn't want any more longbows, so I decided I'd have a different troop type. So I've done 2 units of heavy cavalry. Now you may wonder why. Okay, the heavy cavalry normally are 4 points each, but if you count them as crossbows, they only cost 3 points because they're not that effective really as cavalry. They are good if you read it, what it says in the book. They're good at shooting, but they weren't very happy about getting into combat on horseback, which of course I quite understand with crossbows. And I have got a unit of crossbows, which mounted crossbows, which I've done there, because in fact English did use some crossbows in the especially when they were ravaging the French countryside. They used mounted longbows and mounted crossbows, and of course they were allied with the Burgundians as well. So you could argue, in fact I've done the Burgundian sort of white cross, diagonal cross on these, so they could count as Burgundians. But interestingly enough, if you see, I've done some mounted longbow as well. Now in the book, bows were often used in Eastern European countries, and they would still charge in as well, but the longbows wouldn't do that. They were used a lot for skirmishing. They used horses to get to the big battles, but if they were raiding the countryside, which they often did, they would go mounted, and they would just dismount quickly and use their longbows and mount up again. But they were not keen about getting stuck in. So I've done a sort of a house rule here. It's my own interpretation of the rules. Is they are the same points and do exactly the same job as crossbows. They can't countercharge. They're no good in melee. If they get stuck into melee, you'll see there they've got an attack and defense value of 5+. They have got an armor of 3, but they may not countercharge. And I've put down there, you'll see I've got bows / crossbows, so they're both the same points. But they only shoot at 7+ like crossbows. The bows do as well, because I just feel that's right for them. They would not be like normal Eastern European heavy cavalry armed with bows, because they would be the short bow anyway. These are long bows, and they would dismount. And it does say in the rules that crossbows and longbowmen wouldn't, they don't have to spend a move dismounting. They would do that. They would just shoot from, it's assumed that they've dismounted to shoot, and then they can mount again for free. So I just think that works really well. I wanted to have a unit of longbows. I didn't want 2 lots of crossbows, and I had the figures anyway, so that's what I did. So a bit of explanation there. Anyway, the whole lot comes to 36 points. And you can see that I've put some stakes there as well. I haven't pointed those. I don't know what to do about stakes. If we play a game where the English can form up in a defensive position, you could argue that they'd have to pay some points for those because they must have some disadvantage. There's nothing in the rules for Lion Rampant that cover stakes, but from what I've seen of them, there's been various sort of people have put ideas on the internet, and the one that I quite like most, the one that I like most of all, is the one where they only, if cavalry or mounted attack them frontally, they lose -1 on their armour. So our knights would go from armour 4 down to armour 3. That is all they do, because they were a nuisance, but they weren't that effective really. But they are there. But you know, you could argue maybe you should have a point for doing that. And if you did spend a point for having stakes, which take a move to set up incidentally, but once they're set up, they can't move again. You can't pull them up and carry them with you. They were just usually put in a defensive position and they just stayed there. If you do spend a point, then the French have got another point to spend on something, you know, to bring them up to the same point value. But that's you know, I wouldn't want them to be any more effective than that, because they really weren't. In fact, at Cressy they dug holes instead. They didn't actually have stakes at Cressy. Well, they might have had a few, but they weren't predominant like they were at Agincourt. Right, so that's my English army, up to 36 points there as well. So the two armies, you know, are really, really good. I haven't used them yet. In fact, I've used a couple of my French units not long after I painted them when I had a game with Graham. I forget what we were doing now, but I think that was against English. I used a couple of my French, but I haven't used the French as a whole army, and I haven't used any of the English at all yet, which I will be doing soon. And when I do that, I'll video it and let you know how we get on. Or my leader, you can see my leader in the middle there. He's the Earl of Oxford. I decided not to have a member of the royal family. Graham's got that, he's got Edward. So I decided I'd just do the Earl of Oxford. Only because this heraldry is quite easy to do. It's quite easy to paint. I cheated really. Oh, and the Earl of Oxford has got, if you look some of the bowmen there in red and yellow, they are his colours. Also, you can see there, a couple of the men-at-arms are in his colours as well. Right, so that's it guys. The army's finished 6 months later. I'm really pleased with them. I don't think I'll be adding much to it. I may do some English knights, possibly one day, but I don't really need them. I think there's enough there for me to have a really nice game. I don't know what my next project is. I'm really unsure what to do next. I'm just finishing off a few bits and pieces I want from other rule sets I use, which will keep me going for another month, and then I'll gonna have to make a decision about what to do next. And when I do make that decision, I'll let you know. Right, so I hope you enjoyed that, and enjoy your wargaming, and I'll see you again soon.